For 12 years, I trusted my daughter with everything. Not just my money, my passwords, my paperwork, my medical forms, my retirement decisions. And I never once imagined that one quiet Tuesday afternoon would expose something that would shatter our relationship forever. If you believe family would never take advantage of you, please listen carefully to what happened to me. My name is Margaret Lawson. I'm 72 years old. I live in a small suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I was a public school secretary for 33 years. I wasn't wealthy, but I was careful. My husband, Daniel, worked for the Postal Service. We saved consistently. We paid off our house early. We invested modestly. We lived within our means. When Daniel passed away from pancreatic cancer 8 years ago, I promised him something. "I'll be okay," I told him in that hospital room. "I won't depend on anyone." I meant it. But grief changes people, and loneliness makes you trust faster than you should. My daughter, Ashley, moved closer after Daniel died. She said she wanted to help me adjust. She brought casseroles. She organized my medication. She offered to handle my bills. At first, it felt like love. Looking back, it was positioning. "Mom, online banking is complicated," she told me gently one evening. "These scammers target seniors all the time. Let me monitor your accounts so nothing weird happens." It sounded responsible, protective. She set up alerts on her phone. She connected my checking and savings to her device for convenience. She handled the utilities autopay. She reviewed my credit card statements. And I felt relieved. Because the truth is, after Daniel died, I didn't want to think about numbers anymore. I wanted peace. The first year, everything seemed normal. My Social Security came in, Daniel's pension came in, my small IRA withdrawals were steady. Ashley would stop by once a week. "Everything looks good, Mom. You're financially stable." Those words felt comforting. I never asked to see statements. Why would I? She was my daughter. Then something shifted. Not dramatically, subtly. Ashley and her husband Kyle started upgrading their lifestyle. A newer SUV, weekend trips to Nashville, kitchen renovation, private preschool for my grandson. I assumed Kyle's construction business was booming. When I complimented their new granite countertops, Ashley laughed. "Hard work pays off." I smiled, because I believed her. The first red flag came 3 years ago. I remember it clearly. It was a Thursday morning in late October. I was at the grocery store when my debit card declined. I felt heat rush to my face. The cashier whispered, "It happens all the time." I called Ashley from the parking lot. "Oh, Mom," she sighed lightly. "You forgot we moved some funds around for tax reasons. I'll transfer it back." Within minutes, the card worked again. Crisis solved. Or so I thought. Looking back now, that was a test, and I passed it, because I didn't question anything. Over time, I noticed something else. Whenever I asked small financial questions, Ashley responded with subtle irritation. "Mom, you worry too much. Mom, you don't need to stress about numbers. Mom, at your age, it's better if someone else manages this stuff." At your age. That phrase started appearing more often. I was 72, not incapacitated, but she said it in a tone that made me doubt myself. And doubt is powerful. Last spring, something unusual happened. I received a letter from Medicare about a billing discrepancy. It referenced a supplemental insurance payment I didn't recognize. I called Ashley immediately. "Oh, that," she said quickly. "I switched your supplemental plan. It's better coverage." "You switched it?" "Yes, Mom. You signed the authorization form." I didn't remember signing anything. But then again, maybe I had. Grief fog is real. I told myself I was probably forgetting small details. That's what happens when you get older, right? That's what she implied. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was boring. My air conditioning unit stopped working during a heat wave. The repair estimate was $5,800. I called Ashley. Silence on the other end. "That's a lot, Mom." "I know, but I have savings." Another pause. "Well, not exactly." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "We've been reallocating funds over the years. You don't have as much liquid cash as you think." reallocating. We. I hadn't authorized we. That afternoon, something inside me awoke. Not anger, clarity. I drove myself to Fifth Third Bank. I hadn't physically gone inside in years. The young teller smiled warmly. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like full printed statements. All accounts, last 5 years." She looked surprised. 5 years? Yes. I sat at a small desk in the corner while the printer hummed. Stack after stack of paper. Numbers, dates, transfers, withdrawals. I flipped through casually at first, then slower, then very slowly. Large transfers, consistent monthly withdrawals, ACH payments to accounts I didn't recognize, electronic transfers labeled AL Development, AK Holdings, Home Equity Adjustment. I never owned a development company. I didn't have holdings. I never took out a home equity loan. My hands grew cold. I turned to the last page. Balance. Checking, $3,142. Savings, $9,880. IRA significantly reduced. I felt the air leave my lungs. There should have been $240,000. That wasn't just money. That was security, medical buffer, nursing care insurance, freedom. I walked back to the teller. "Can you show me the linked accounts these transfers went to?" She typed carefully. Then her face changed. "These accounts are co-authorized users." "Authorized by whom?" She rotated the screen gently toward me. "Ashley Lawson." My daughter had been added as co-access 3 years after Daniel died, with full transfer permissions. I never remembered signing that form. I drove home slowly, very slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. Instead, I did something she never expected. I opened Daniel's old file cabinet, and I started comparing signatures, thank forms, insurance documents, old checks. Then I compared them to the signature on the authorization copy the bank printed. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. The M was wrong. I never loop my M like that. That night, Ashley called casually. "Mom, about the AC, maybe we can finance it." Her tone was calm, controlled, like she was managing a child. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't respond immediately. "Mom?" I looked at the bank statements spread across my dining table, and I asked quietly, "Ashley, how long have you had access to my full accounts?" Silence. Then a small laugh. "Mom, we've talked about this. I help you manage things." That wasn't my question. Her tone hardened slightly. "Why are you interrogating me?" "Because I finally logged in myself," I thought. "Because I finally saw everything." But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I said something simple. "I'm going to handle my own finances from now on." The shift in her breathing was immediate. "That's not a good idea, Mom." "Why?" "You'll get confused." There it was again. Confused, old, dependent. For 12 years, I thought my daughter was protecting me. But sitting at that dining table, looking at those numbers, I realized something that made my heart ache more than the missing money. She didn't see me as her mother. She saw me as an account, and I had just logged in. What I discovered over the next 48 hours made the financial loss look small, because this wasn't just about transfers. It was about documents, ownership, and something filed with the county records office without my knowledge. In part 2, I'll tell you what I found when I searched public property records. If you believe seniors deserve independence, not control, subscribe, and tell me honestly if you found out. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger, because of clarity. There's something terrifying about realizing you've been manipulated slowly. Not robbed at gunpoint, not scammed by a stranger, but repositioned, adjusted, reframed over time. I sat at my kitchen table until nearly 2 a.m., bank statements spread in front of me like evidence in a courtroom. 12 years. Transfers averaging $3,000 to $7,000 every month, sometimes more. Some labeled investment support, others labeled family allocation. Family allocation. I never authorized any allocation. I never even used that word. At 2:17 a.m., I opened my laptop. For the first time in years, I logged into my online banking without Ashley's help. The password still worked. That surprised me. If she had wanted to fully control everything, she could have locked me out. But she hadn't. Why? Because she assumed I would never check. The next morning, instead of calling her, I drove to the county recorder's office. I don't know why that thought came to me. Maybe instinct? Maybe something Daniel once said about always checking public filings. We used to joke that paper trails tell the truth. The clerk at the desk asked what I was looking for. Any filings related to my property address in the last 5 years. She typed for a few seconds, then frowned slightly. There are two. Two. I never filed anything. She printed them. The first was something small, a routine tax reassessment. The second made my vision blur. Transfer on death deed amendment. Filed 3 years ago. Grantor, Margaret Lawson. Beneficiary, Ashley Lawson. I stared at the signature line. It was mine, but it wasn't. The same looping M, the same unnatural pressure in the pen stroke. I never filed that. Never even discussed it. Transfer on death deed means that upon my death, my house automatically transfers to Ashley without probate. No will contest, no legal review, instant ownership, and I had no memory of signing it. I drove home in silence. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, cold, focused. This wasn't financial assistance. This was estate positioning, and it had been done quietly. 3 years ago. The same year my banking access was changed. The same year Ashley insisted on helping more aggressively. I called Fifth Third Bank again and requested copies of all authorization forms adding Ashley as joint account access. They emailed them within the hour. Signed, notarized, witnessed, all dated within a 2-week window. The same 2 weeks Daniel's 1-year anniversary had passed. The same time I barely left my bedroom. The same time Ashley handled everything. My phone rang. Ashley. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text. Mom, why did the bank call me asking if I still need joint access? Interesting. She had been alerted, which meant she had notifications set up for account activity changes, which meant she was actively monitoring control. I replied simply, I'm reviewing my finances. 3 dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, why now? Because I woke up, I thought, but I didn't type that. Instead, because I can. Her reply took longer this time. Mom, are you feeling okay? There it was, the shift, concern masking control, gaslighting disguised as care. That afternoon, Ashley showed up at my house unannounced. She didn't bring food, she didn't smile, she walked in with urgency. Why are you digging through paperwork? Because it's mine. Her jaw tightened. You're overreacting. To what? To normal estate planning. Normal estate planning requires consent. You signed everything. I don't remember signing anything. She crossed her arms. You forget things now, Mom. There it was again. Confusion, age, memory decline. She was building a narrative and I could see it clearly now. Do you think I'm mentally incompetent? I asked calmly. She hesitated. I think you get overwhelmed. That wasn't an answer. Did you ever consider transferring my house upon my death? We did consider it. No, you told me you were organizing paperwork. That's the same thing. No, Ashley, it isn't. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, calculation. She was measuring how much I knew, how much I suspected, how far she could push. You're making this dramatic, she said finally. It's just planning ahead. Planning ahead for what? For my death? Without my awareness? That evening, I called a local estate attorney. His name was David Kaplan, recommended by a woman from church. I didn't tell Ashley. I scheduled a consultation for the next morning. I brought everything. Bank statements, authorization forms, property filing. Kaplan read quietly, then leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Lawson, did you knowingly grant full joint account rights? No. Did you knowingly file a transfer on death deed? No. He folded his hands. Then we may be dealing with either undue influence or forgery. The word forgery felt heavy. He continued, when someone in a position of trust pressures a vulnerable person into signing documents they don't fully understand, that can legally qualify as exploitation. I wasn't pressured. He looked at me carefully. Were you grieving? Yes.
Were you dependent on her assistance at that time? Yes. Did she isolate you from financial oversight? My throat tightened. Yes. He nodded slowly. That's a pattern we see more often than people realize. Exploitation. I never imagined that word applying to my daughter, but sitting there in that office, it fit. Kaplan advised 3 immediate steps. 1. Revoke all joint account access. 2. File an affidavit disputing the transfer on death deed. 3. Freeze any further transfers pending investigation. He asked gently, "Are you prepared for confrontation?" I already had it. He gave a small, knowing smile. "This won't be the last." When I got home, Ashley was waiting in her car outside. She stepped out immediately. "You met with a lawyer." It wasn't a question. "How do you know that?" I called the bank. She still had monitoring alerts active. That confirmed it. "You're spying on my account activity?" "I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From yourself." That sentence landed like a slap. "I am not incompetent," I said evenly. She lowered her voice. "You're being manipulated by someone." "No, Ashley, I've been manipulated for 12 years. Her face flushed. "You think I stole from you?" "I think money moved without my informed consent." "That's insulting." "So is filing property documents without telling me." Her eyes widened just slightly, so she didn't expect me to find that yet. "Good." "You're twisting this," she snapped. "Everything I did was to make sure your assets stayed in the family." "In the family," meaning with her. "You didn't consult me. You would have said no." "Exactly." Silence. We stood in my driveway like strangers. Then she said something that changed everything. "If something happened to you tomorrow, I'd need access. If something happens to me tomorrow, my will handles that. You don't even remember what your will says." She was pushing hard now, trying to destabilize me, trying to create doubt, but something inside me had shifted permanently. I no longer questioned my memory. I questioned her motives. That night, I checked something else. My credit report. 3 new lines of credit. Authorized user, Ashley Lawson. Home improvement financing, vehicle equity line, and a small business credit card. Under a company name, AL Development. The same name from my bank statements. AL, Ashley Lawson. Not investment support, not reallocation. Funding. My heart pounded, but not from panic, from realization. This wasn't careless spending. This was structured, planned, layered. Legal paperwork, joint access, property positioning, credit lines, all interconnected, and I had just touched the edge of it. At 11:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Ashley again. "Mom, please stop. You're going to ruin everything." "Ruin what? The plan? The illusion? The control?" I didn't respond. Instead, I typed a message to Attorney Kaplan. "We need to discuss fraud reporting." Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I slept without fear, because clarity replaces confusion, and I was no longer confused. But what I didn't.
The next morning, I did something I should have done years ago. I searched the Ohio Secretary of State Business Registry. I typed in. The result appeared immediately. Registered 4 years ago. Principal agent, Kyle Bennett. Managing member, Ashley Lawson. Business address? My home address. I stared at the screen. They had used my address to register their company without telling me. The filing date was 3 years and 8 months ago. The exact same month the transfer on death deed was amended. The exact same month Ashley gained joint access to my bank accounts. The exact same month large transfers began. This wasn't random. This was alignment. I printed every public document, articles of incorporation, operating agreement summary, annual reports. Then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Initial capital contribution, $150,000. Source, member investment. Member, Ashley. Ashley did not have $150,000 of her own. Kyle's construction business had struggled for years. I knew that because I had loaned them money repeatedly. Except now I knew. They weren't loans. They were capital injections. I drove to Attorney Kaplan's office without calling first. He welcomed me in immediately when he saw the stack of papers in my hand. "This is the LLC," I said quietly. He reviewed the documents carefully. "Your address is listed as the principal place of business." I never authorized that. And the initial funding matches the transfer pattern from your accounts. Yes. He leans back slowly. This is no longer just potential undue influence. This is structured financial exploitation. The word exploitation no longer shocked me. It felt accurate. Kaplan explained something important. Because Ashley had joint account access, transfers technically weren't illegal by default. Joint access allows movement of funds. However, if that access was obtained through forgery or manipulation, and if the funds were used for personal gain without informed consent, it could qualify as civil fraud, possibly criminal elder exploitation. The phrase criminal elder exploitation felt surreal. That happens to strangers, not daughters. Do you want to pursue this formally? Kaplan asked gently. That question carried weight, because once formal proceedings begin, relationships rarely survive. I thought about Daniel. I thought about the promise I made him. I thought about the way Ashley said, "You'll get confused." And I said, quietly, "Yes." Kaplan recommended forensic accounting, tracing funds, identifying direct transfers from my accounts to AL Development. Within 48 hours, the preliminary trace came back. Over 4 years, $198,400 transferred from my savings and IRA distributions directly into accounts controlled by AL Development. Nearly $200,000 without a written loan agreement, without a repayment structure, without disclosure. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came next. AL Development had purchased 2 rental properties, both titled under the LLC. One of those properties, financed partially through a home equity line, a line of credit opened against my home. I felt the room tilt slightly. "I never took out a home equity line," I whispered. Kaplan's face hardened. It appears paperwork was filed authorizing it. Signed, notarized, my forged signature, again. I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. There's a moment when pain becomes too deep for tears. Instead, it becomes stillness. Ashley had not only drained liquid funds, she had leveraged my house, the house Daniel and I paid off early, the house we celebrated owning outright, the house I thought was secure. It had been collateral, without my knowledge. That evening, Ashley called again. I answered this time. Her voice was tight. "Mom, Kyle said you've been looking into AL Development." "Yes." "You had no right." "I have every right. That's our company, funded by my money." Silence. Then, "It wasn't stealing, it was investing. You never asked me to invest. You would have said no." "Exactly." Her breathing grew heavier. "You don't understand business. I understand consent." Then she said something that finally stripped away all illusion. "You aren't using the money anyway." There it was, the entitlement, the assumption, the belief that my future security was less important than her expansion. "That money was for medical care, Ashley. You have Medicare. You don't know how aging works. You know I'm overreacting." No, I was reacting appropriately for the first time. I told her something calmly. "I have retained legal counsel." Complete silence. Then her voice changed, lower, dangerous. "You're going to destroy this family over paperwork? You destroyed trust. You're choosing money over your daughter." "No, I'm choosing boundaries." She hung up. The next morning, Kyle showed up alone. That surprised me. He rarely confronted anything directly. He stood in my driveway, hands in his pockets. "Margaret, can we talk?" His tone was different from Ashley's, less defensive, more measured. "You leveraged my house," I said before he could begin. He winced a little. "It was temporary, without permission. We planned to refinance and pay it down. With what money? The rentals will generate income. When?" He didn't answer, because the truth was clear. The rentals had been operating at a loss, property taxes overdue, maintenance unpaid, and the home equity line interest accumulating on my house. "You put my home at risk," I said quietly. He looked down. "We were trying to build something stable. With my retirement? We thought you'd want to help. Helping requires transparency." He exhaled sharply. "Ashley said you agreed." "I didn't."
He studied my face, and for the first time, I think he realized this wasn't confusion. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was clarity. Kaplan moved quickly. He filed revocation of joint account authority, fraud affidavit for forged deed, notice of disputed home equity line, demand letter for accounting and restitution. Ashley received official notice 3 days later. She didn't call, she didn't text. Instead, she received something unexpected, a certified letter from an attorney representing AL Development LLC. The letter claimed all transfers were voluntary gifts or investments. All property filings were properly authorized. Any claims of incompetence were unfounded. They were preparing to protect assets, not apologize. That night, I opened Daniel's old safe. Inside were documents he always kept secure, including our original will, and something else, a notarized medical capacity evaluation 2 years before his death. He had insisted we both complete them. Mine stated clearly, Margaret Lawson is mentally competent with no cognitive impairment. It wasn't recent, but it was baseline documentation. Kaplan smiled when I showed him. This helps. Then the forensic accountant found something else. Email correspondence between Kyle and a private lender. Attached document, projected repayment plan. Under funding source, ML retirement liquidity. My initials, used casually as a funding line item, like I was a bank. That night I finally cried. Not because of the money, not because of the house, because of the disrespect. Because somewhere along the line, my daughter stopped seeing me as my mother and started seeing me as capital. 2 days later, Kaplan called. There's something else. My stomach tightened. What is it? The notary listed on your home equity documents has a suspended license. What does that mean? It means the notarization may be invalid. Invalid documentation, invalid access, invalid leverage. The structure was cracking. Ashley called that evening, not angry, not defensive, afraid. Mom, are you reporting this to the authorities? The first sign that Ashley was panicking came at 6:12 a.m. on a Monday. My phone buzzed repeatedly while I was still in bed. 5 missed calls, 3 text messages, then 1 voicemail. Her voice wasn't controlled this time. It wasn't calm. It wasn't condescending. It was shaken. Mom, they froze the LLC operating account. I sat up slowly. I already knew that was a possibility. When fraud affidavits are filed and loan documents are disputed, banks act fast. They said there's a pending investigation, she continued in the voicemail. Kyle can't access payroll. Tenants' deposits are locked. Mom, you need to fix this. Fix this, as if I had broken something, as if uncovering the truth was damage. I didn't call her back immediately. Instead, I made coffee, fed the birds outside my kitchen window, and sat down calmly. There's something powerful about not reacting on someone else's timeline. After 12 years of quiet control, I had no intention of rushing. At 8:40 a.m., she showed up, again. This time, she didn't knock. She used the spare key she'd had for years. That was her first mistake. Mom, this is insane, she burst into the kitchen. You don't get to walk in anymore, I said evenly. Her movements froze. You're freezing us out. No, I'm securing myself. You're killing our business. You built it on my retirement. Her face flushed. You never needed that much money. That sentence again, the belief that my future didn't require protection. Kyle walked in behind her. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. This has gone too far, he said quietly. 4 years went too far, I replied. Ashley's voice sharpened. You filed criminal fraud, Mom. Criminal. Yes. Do you understand what that means? Yes. You're making me look like a thief. I held her gaze. You acted like one. Silence fell heavy in the room. Then Ashley shifted tactics. Her voice softened. Her eyes welled up. Mom, we were trying to build something for the family. For which family? Ours. Your grandson's future. You leveraged your mother's house for your son's preschool. That's unfair. No, it's factual. She started crying, and for a brief moment, my heart trembled, because no matter how much clarity replaces confusion, she was still my child. I remembered braiding her hair before school, sitting in hospital rooms when she had pneumonia at 6, holding her hand when she cried over her first heartbreak. But memory cannot override reality, and reality was simple. She had built a financial structure using my grief as leverage.
Kyle stepped forward. "We can fix this," he said quickly. "We'll sign repayment agreements, transfer properties back, remove the lien." Why wasn't that done before I discovered it? They didn't answer, because the truth was obvious. They never planned to disclose it. It was meant to continue quietly. Ashley's tone shifted again. "You're being influenced. By whom? That lawyer. He's scaring you." "No, Ashley, facts are scaring you." She stared at me like I had become someone unfamiliar. "You've changed." "No," I said calmly. "I've woken up." That afternoon, I filed something else. Revocation of power of attorney. I didn't even know she had limited financial POA authority until Kaplan reviewed archived filings. It had been signed during the same 2-week window years ago. Another signature, another document I did not recall fully understanding. Revoked. Immediately. The following day, Ashley escalated. She began calling extended family members, my sister in Michigan, my cousin in Kentucky, even old church friends. She framed the narrative carefully. "Mom's confused. She's being manipulated. She doesn't understand business." Within 24 hours, I received 3 concerned calls. "Margaret, are you okay? Do you need someone to check on you?" It was subtle, strategic. She was attempting to build doubt. If enough people questioned my stability, it would support her defense. I called Kaplan immediately. He nodded. "This is common. When financial exploitation is exposed, the accused often attempt to discredit the victim's capacity." "Victim?" I repeated quietly. "Yes," he said gently. "That's what you are in this scenario." I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone taking control. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A certified notice arrived from the bank. The home equity line had been frozen pending signature verification. The notary involved in my documents was under investigation. The documents were flagged as potentially fraudulent. The structure was collapsing, and Ashley knew it. That evening, she called again. Her voice was no longer angry. It was desperate. "Mom, they're threatening foreclosure if the equity line isn't resolved." "On my house?" "Yes. You created that risk. We can refinance." "With what credit?" Silence. Then she said something I will never forget. "You're destroying your grandson's stability." There it was. Emotional leverage. She knew exactly where to press. My grandson, 7 years old, sweet, innocent, unaffected by adult greed. "You involved him," I said quietly. "No, you did. I did not sign those documents. You let this spiral. You built this foundation." Her voice broke. "You're choosing money over family." I felt something inside me settle completely. "No," I said calmly. "I'm choosing integrity over manipulation." She hung up. 3 days later, a sheriff's deputy arrived at my door. My stomach tightened. "Mrs. Lawson?" "Yes." "You're being served." Ashley had filed a petition in probate court, alleging financial incompetence, seeking temporary conservatorship. She was attempting to legally declare me incapable of managing my own finances, so she could regain control. I stood there holding the paperwork, and I felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, resolve. Kaplan moved immediately. He filed objection, requested independent cognitive evaluation, submitted documentation of my financial literacy history, my employment records, volunteer leadership roles, medical records. The court ordered evaluation within 10 days. Ashley had pushed too far. The evaluation lasted 2 hours. Memory testing, financial reasoning scenarios, logical problem solving. When the psychologist finished, she smiled warmly. "Mrs. Lawson, your cognitive functioning is above average for your age." I nodded. "I've always handled budgets." She smiled again. "Yes, I can tell." 2 weeks later, the court denied Ashley's petition, citing insufficient evidence of incapacity. Her attempt had backfired. Public record now showed she attempted to declare her own mother incompetent. The confrontation came 3 days later. She arrived again, but this time she didn't come inside. She stood on the porch, alone, no Kyle. No anger, just exhaustion. "Mom, you could have handled this privately," she said quietly. I tried. "No, you investigated." "Yes." She swallowed. "You don't trust me anymore." I held her gaze. "I don't." Tears filled her eyes. "You've humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. I was building something. You built it on deception." Silence stretched between us. Then she shifted, whispered, "I never thought you'd go this far." And I answered honestly, "Neither did I." She left without another word, and as I watched her walk down the driveway, I felt something heavy lift. Because for 12 years she controlled the narrative. Now the truth controlled it. But consequences were still unfolding. The forensic audit report was finalized. It documented $198,400 direct transfers, $62,000 home equity exposure, $14,000 credit line activity, document irregularities, total financial risk over $270,000. And the district attorney's office requested full documentation review. Criminal referral was now possible. This was no longer a family argument. It was a case. That night, I sat alone in my living room, Daniel's photo on the mantel. I looked at him and whispered, I kept my promise. Because I had. I didn't become dependent. I didn't become silent. I didn't become confused. I became aware. But what came next was the hardest part of all, because consequences don't just punish actions, they redefine relationships. And when the district attorney called, everything shifted permanently. In part 5, I'll tell you what decision I made, whether I pressed charges, and what happened to AL development. If you're still here, if you believe age does not equal weakness, subscribe and tell me, if your own child tried to legally declare you incompetent, would you forgive them? Or would you draw the line permanently? Because what happened next changed my family forever. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I remember because I had just finished watering the hydrangeas Daniel planted the year before he passed. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Lawson, this is Assistant District Attorney Michelle Harper. Her voice was steady, professional. We've reviewed the documentation provided by your attorney and the forensic accounting summary. I sat down slowly on the porch steps. We have sufficient basis to pursue charges related to financial exploitation of an elderly adult and fraudulent filing of property instruments. Charges. The word didn't echo this time. It landed. Solid. Real. We would need your cooperation to proceed, she continued, and your formal statement confirming lack of consent. I looked at the house. My house. The one Daniel and I paid off early. The one nearly leveraged without my knowledge. Yes, I said quietly. I'll cooperate. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I understood the weight of it. Pressing charges meant public record, court filings, possibly media listing. It meant my daughter's name attached to criminal allegations. It meant consequences that could ripple for years. But I also understood something else. If I stopped now, if I softened because of guilt, nothing would change. And someone else, another widow, another grandmother, might be the next quiet target. Ashley called the next morning. Her voice was trembling. They contacted Kyle. Yes. You actually went through with it? Yes. You're going to send your own daughter to court. I'm holding you accountable. She started crying. Not the control tears from before, not the manipulative ones. These were different, raw. Mom, I didn't think it would get this big. That's the problem. You never thought. There was a long silence between us. Then she said something I had been waiting to hear. I should have told you. Yes. I knew you wouldn't approve. Yes. I didn't want to hear no. There it was. Finally. Not denial, not deflection. Truth. But truth does not erase consequence. I can't undo what's already in motion, I said gently. You can drop it. No. Her breathing hitched. You're choosing strangers over me. I'm choosing justice. Kyle called later that afternoon. His tone was exhausted. We're prepared to liquidate the rentals, he said quietly. Why now? To make restitution. Because the accounts are frozen. Yes. And because this is real. Yes. Within 2 weeks, one property sold. Below projected value, but enough to begin repayment. The second was listed immediately. The home equity line was officially voided after signature verification proved forgery. The lien was removed from my house. When Kaplan handed me the confirmation letter, I exhaled fully for the first time in months. My house was mine again, fully, legally, safely. Ashley's conservatorship petition was formally dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could not refile without substantial new evidence. That public record would remain attached to her name,
a documented attempt to declare her mother incompetent. That was not my choice. That was hers. The criminal case moved slowly, as most do. Negotiations began. Restitution agreement. Deferred adjudication possibility. Kyle's attorney pushed for reduced charges. Ashley's attorney emphasized family reconciliation. The district attorney's office remained firm. Financial exploitation carries weight in Ohio. And I was not confused. I was articulate, and I was determined. Then something unexpected happened. Ashley asked to meet. Not at my house, not at hers, at a neutral place. A small cafe halfway between us. I agreed, because closure requires conversation, but not surrender. She arrived early. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I came to listen." She nodded, then stared down at her coffee cup for a long moment. "I never planned to hurt you. I believe that. I thought we'd fix it before you noticed." The honesty was almost painful. "You didn't think I'd notice? I thought you trusted me enough not to look." There it was again. Trust mistaken for blindness. "I trusted you because you were my daughter," I said softly. She swallowed. "I was afraid." Of what? Of failing. Kyle's business had been struggling longer than I realized. Debt mounting, credit tightening. She felt pressure. Pressure to maintain lifestyle. Pressure to appear successful. Pressure to provide stability. And instead of asking, she took. "I felt entitled," she whispered finally. "Yes," I said gently. "I know." Tears slid down her face. "I don't know how I became that person." I looked at her carefully. "Choices," I said. "Repeated choices." She asked the question I knew was coming. "Will you ever forgive me?" Forgiveness. Such a complicated word. "I can forgive you," I said slowly. "But forgiveness does not mean access." She looked confused. "I love you," I continued, "but I will never give you financial control again." Her face crumpled. "That's permanent?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I understand." And for the first time, I believed she did. The final restitution agreement required full repayment over structured installments. Property liquidation covered most of it. Remaining balance placed under court supervision. No jail time, but 5 years of probation, financial monitoring, and permanent record of the case. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. 6 months later, something small but meaningful happened. Ashley asked to come over. She knocked and waited. That simple act felt larger than any courtroom moment, because boundaries had finally been recognized. We rebuilt slowly, cautiously, with clarity. Family dinners resumed, but financial discussions did not. Bank accounts were separate, documents were secured. Trust was no longer assumed, it was earned in increments. One evening, my grandson asked innocently, "Grandma, why were Mom and Dad sad for a while?" Children sense tension. I smiled gently. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I told him, "and sometimes they learn from them." Did they learn? I looked toward the kitchen, where Ashley stood quietly washing dishes. "Yes," I said softly. "I think they did." People ask me now if it was worth it, if pursuing charges was worth the pain, if exposing my own daughter publicly was worth the strain. And my answer is simple. Yes. Because silence would have cost more. Because pretending would have cost more. Because losing my house would have cost more. And because dignity matters, especially at this stage of life. There's a dangerous narrative that circulates quietly, that aging equals vulnerability, that grandmothers are forgetful, that widows are easy to guide, that kindness equals weakness. It doesn't. Experience is not ignorance. Grief is not incompetence. Love is not surrender. I didn't destroy my family. I redefined it, on terms that included respect. Today, my accounts are secure. My home is protected. My documents are updated.
My boundaries are clear, and my relationship with my daughter is honest. Not perfect, but honest. And that is stronger than blind trust ever was. If you are listening to this, if you are over 50, if you have ever felt dismissed, managed, or quietly overridden, hear me clearly. You are not fragile. You are not outdated. You are not incapable. And